All right, friends, it's Timon. We are back with a Jason Blaha video, man. Yes, so we're going to react to the gym, lifting, recruiting, fitness gear slave himself, man. This Bombaclat Blaha. So Blaha says most top bodybuilders and powerlifters do less than 20 sets a week. Man, bodybuilding is not powerlifting. Powerlifting is not bodybuilding. Why would a powerlifter do sets? Ask yourself this question. They're not building muscle. They're trying to get better at lifting in the opposite direction of gravity. So why would they do a lot of sets or reps or whatever? None of this makes sense. Does he say sets? Sorry. Yeah, sets. I don't know. Less than 20 sets. I don't know. The reason in bodybuilding you're doing astronomically higher sets and you stick to a high rep range is because we're trying to cause damage so that we could build more myofibrillars. That's the goal in bodybuilding.
The overwhelming majority of top bodybuilders and powerlifters around the world do less than 20 sets a week. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here.
Bodybuilders and powerlifters do less than 20 sets per week. No, bodybuilding, the set range can be astronomically high. It can even go as high as 30, maybe even more. It depends. You know what I mean? To get a relative amount of damage in muscle fibers is astronomically difficult, even in the eccentric. Forget about the concentric or full range of motion. There's a lot of crazy people out there trying to chase certain things. Now, I've done full range of motion, getting muscle damage. I could bring it back every week, even if I were to do full range. The thing is, though, I'm doing a lot of sets. How am I doing a lot of sets? Well, man, if I'm doing flat bench, upper chest, middle, lower chest, 5 times 10, 5 times 10, 5 times 10, you know what I mean? Let's say I just finish it off with some flies just for fun. That's a lot. You understand me? That's a lot. And then I go and do my back. So let's just say I don't do any pull-ups or dips, okay? Let's say I just use pull down on the machine. So behind the neck, 5 times 10. In the front, 5 times 10. Close grip, 5 times 10. One arm rows, 5 times 10, man. Landmine rows, 5 times 10. Barbell rows, 5 times 10. Reverse row barbell, 5 times 10. I don't know. What else can I add there? My traps, 5 times 10. Then I go do my shoulders, man. Behind the neck, 5 times 10. From the front, press OHP, 5 times 10. Flies, 5 times 10. Reverse or rear delt, 5 times 10. Front delt, 5 times 10. You know what I mean? Your arms, you're doing your arms, 5 times 10. Your bicep, your tricep, 5 times 10. Your what do you call it? Your forearms, 5 times 10. From the front, from behind, 5 times 10. Bro, that's a lot of work, bro. And then you're doing your abs and maybe your neck as well. 5 times 10, 5 times 10, whatever. So that's a lot of work on the day, for an upper body day, trust me. You know what I mean? And then you start, of course, you're going to be adding, eventually you'll be adding weight too. You know, you'll go higher, you know. But in a full upper body, that's kind of what they call an overworking or overtraining of that muscle. It becomes overtrained because each muscle has to compensate for the last muscle. And so this damage becomes astronomically high in a full range of motion. See what I mean? But eventually you'll adapt and you have to figure out how to unadapt. That's when you move over to a more that's when you move over to a more, how should I put it, advanced modality in lifting, what we call eccentric overload, okay? So we're not doing anything that has to have anything to do with full range of motion anymore. Now, we're not concentrically lifting, of course not. We're just doing something in a full range. But then, eventually, like I said, eventually you'll adapt and you have to move over to something more advanced like eccentric overloads, maximal training eccentrically. That's what we call it. Maximal training eccentrically. That's it. And you just stay there. but powerlifting is just based on lifting in the opposite direction against gravity. Why do you need a lot of sets? I don't know. Maybe you're doing one repetition. 1 rep, 10 sets. You know what I mean? You're just getting better at lifting against gravity.
Thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today, but a quick reminder, if you
There's really no muscle growth here. I can say though, deadlifting, if you're pulling up, right? You're pulling. So as you're pulling, this is somewhat of an eccentric movement, but it's complicated. It's this position where he's in right now, he hit the isometric and now it'll be concentric. So it's a full range of motion coming from the bottom up. But coming down, they just drop the weight. So can you get some damage lifting doing powerlifting? Yeah, because man, let's just say you were doing astronomically heavy weight, like 500 pounds. That's a lot. So your upper trap area is definitely going to get worked where the shoulder area is. And these shoulders and the arms, there's kind of a tearing motion. But it'll rapidly adapt and it won't give you any more. It will give you some, but it won't give you any more. You're going to have to keep going heavier and heavier for sure. People do. They do sometimes about 3 repetitions, so three rep max, maybe lifting these things. Occasionally, I've seen some powerlifters lift five repetitions. It depends. Really heavy. Depends what they're doing there. So can you get some damage lifting a weight off a floor? Yeah, it depends. See what I mean? So yeah, there can be some growth there, but not a lot.
guys will please like my video, then follow or subscribe to me if you have not already, and drop me a comment below. I would greatly appreciate it.
I can't, Blaha, because you banned me.
All right, let's get over to the topic. It's such a strange thing because
It is.
this is something that we've seen a lot of come up.
Are you trying to grow boobs, Blaha? Look at this. Look at your chest.
A lot with all this, the research, evidence-based circles, with certain circles only pushing the really high volume. What we need
You know, I don't even know what you're doing there. Is that a squat? Or you're probably going to call that a good morning. Who the hell knows?
to be clear on is this is not agreed upon. So when people say, well, this is what the science is showing, no, you're seeing one circle of researchers, and there's a
What does the science show? Please tell us.
lot of political bias within that circle. I'm not going to go into all that again. That's been covered by me, by other people out there, with Dr. Brad and his circle and the grants and stuff. Other people out there, with
Dr. Brad, yes.
Brad and his circle and the grants and stuff involved. But there are other circles that say, look, like 10 to 20 is still the sweet spot. This is where pretty much all the gains happen, and you'll probably regret.
What sweet spot, man? In eccentric lifting, you don't need to know any of these things. You go off a feeling. You'll feel that tearing. You'll know because you won't be able to eke out another set, okay? By the time you reach a certain set, it'll be like, yeah, you can feel that weakness already. You feel weak because of all that damage you've caused to the muscle fiber. Trust me, you're going to feel it.
Rest or get less gains going beyond that. All right, and what we need to remember is that historically, this has always been the sweet spot. Like what most top bodybuilders, for example, found, like the guys who were winning in bodybuilding, really winning, you know, those sort of volumes, like that about that 15 up to about 20 sets of muscle groups.
What is he talking about? These people winning in bodybuilding. They've continued in their behavior in full range of motion. Look, I'm not saying you can't get adaptations in full range of motion. People do. They get some adaptations. You understand me? Because they work it heavier, they go heavier, they do a little bit of more of something, but they don't get very much there. You understand me? And it isn't really the best modality to get to your destination. Honestly, gotta tell you the truth. Eccentric overload is the most advanced way to get to your destination in bodybuilding. That is the most advanced way. Like I said, I'm not saying you can't get there with a full range of motion, but it'll adapt rapidly. It'll quickly adapt, and nothing will come of that. Yeah, you can keep lifting heavier. You could say overload in the concentric. You're going to overload the concentric with some heavy weight, but again, it's all dependent on the eccentric to get that damage, not the concentric. So Yeah, can you eke out a few more adaptations? Yeah, but you're not going over your 100% max. And you can't lift. Here's the thing. You can't lift a weight concentrically at 100%. See what I mean? But you can lift 140% eccentrically. That's why you're able to cause this damage with relative ease in the eccentric, which you couldn't get concentrically lifting in a full range of motion. Let's just put it that way. See what I mean?
Did a little less. Really is where they found their sweet spot.
That's the reason in bodybuilding they came up with this idea of isolation. In the isolation movement, you're able to isolate the eccentric and you're able to go astronomically heavy. That's the idea. Now, in powerlifting, what do? Well, they don't isolate these body parts. You know, they're not looking to work small body parts. We're trying to get all around strong in bodybuilding. We do the big four, but we're trying to bring up all the other parts, the smaller parts. See what I mean? We do big parts. The big parts would be the dip, the pull-ups, and then the big four. Now, but in powerlifting, they left out the dip and the pull-up. They don't do those. That's why bodybuilding is much more advanced modality for building your body. Powerlifting is not a good modality for building your body big and strong. It isn't. If you want to get big and strong, then bodybuilding is your go-to. But powerlifting, that isn't it. If you want to stay small and weak but be strong lifting concentrically, then you want to be a powerlifter. See what I mean?
Full-time professional bodybuilders who are making their living at it, who don't even have other jobs. Okay? And so
there's no such thing as professional bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is not a sport. It can't be. It compromises sportive performance. I don't know what Blah is talking about.
you know, you see this, right? And this is what people have always done. I've ventured above that, and you know what? It didn't make me any stronger or any better than when I used less than that. Like I personally have always found, for me, I'm usually the strongest right around 12 sets. Strongest meaning like when I've had the biggest squats, the biggest deadlifts, when I'm in that 600 plus range on both. Even in my 40s, it's not when I was doing 30 sets for some of this stuff. It's when I did like 12. About 12 sets total.
Yeah, in bodybuilding, we don't get stronger lifting 12 sets. We get weaker. We get smaller. We get a little bit smaller and we get a little bit weaker. But that little bit smaller, we get a little bit bigger each time. That's why it takes a while to see the gains. It takes weeks to months to see gains lifting eccentrically because you got to get a little bit smaller to get a little bit bigger. So in your session, you're getting weaker and you're getting a little bit smaller after your session. And then when you come back, you're slightly bigger and you are stronger. You get bigger, you get stronger each time you come back. It's like inflation. It starts small and then it starts working its way up. See what I mean? Yeah.
It's kind of hard to factor your max work and speed work into that, but we'll just call it around there. I always got great results there. Okay? And the muscles that I've tried to personally do the really high volumes with are the ones that are still lagging, right? Because I didn't train my biceps much. They were always lagging from my powerlifting days, and I've come in and done these 20, 30 sets a week of curls, and it honestly didn't work that well. So that's why the reason I've scaled back.
Because you're adapted. You're lifting in a full range of motion. Your muscles are now adapted. They're not growing. So he's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to do my biceps and my triceps, but they're not growing. And he says, I'm going to try to get them big and strong to try to transfer it over to powerlifting. It doesn't work because bodybuilding is based on eccentric exercise. It's not based on concentric lifting.
Training with the same volumes I trained my quads and my hamstrings, you know, the stuff that's massive, my lats. That's what I need to be doing. And even I've had to step back and say, look, these evidence-based guys are flat wrong. this is ridiculous. And I've seen guys like Lyle McDonald rip this apart, of saying, look, if you look at their data, it doesn't even show what their conclusions are with some of these really high set studies. If you actually look at the data, it doesn't even support that, like, the 50 sets produce more muscle than the 20. It doesn't really support that.
Does 50 sets produce more muscle gains than 20 in the eccentric? Yes, because you got more damage. See what I mean? The more damage you get, the more chances you have of what? Getting a repair and then a remodeling of that muscle. Now here's the problem in lifting. You may get some damage lifting in full range of motion, but because that damage is so minute in your lifting, and you guys come into the gym, it's so minute that your body forgoes the remodeling. I've done this video before. It's down in my list. I don't know where. It's really far away. People always ask me, why don't you put it in your playlist? I can't get these things to get into the playlist. I don't know how to do it. It keeps going back on private, and it would only show one video. So that's why I haven't done it. So I have a video talking about 3 levels of damage. And I'm telling you, there's a minute amount of damage. Let's say you're causing some structural damage there. Very minute. Your body is just going to repair it. So you guys that said, oh, we're lifting and the muscles are just repairing. Well, you would be right. Those guys would be right. I remember people saying that, oh, it just repairs. Yeah, it just repairs. There's no remodeling. The remodeling happens mostly in the eccentric because there's always going to be much more damage in the eccentric than you lifting in full range of motion adapted. So if you're adapted, let's say you're adapted, like me, I come in, let's say I'm doing I can do a full range of motion, but it's an overtraining of that muscle in full range. When I come in, and I would only come in once a week. See what I mean? I do it coming in once a week. But I put in a lot of sets. There's a lot of sets and reps going on there in a full upper body movement. So there you go. So think about it. I'm putting in already a lot of sets and reps in a full range of motion trying to get this damage. That is crazy. Can you imagine eccentrically you're putting in so many sets and reps to try to get it to damage so that you could get it to do what? To remodel. See what I mean? At some point, this damage, it's so minute that it forgoes the remodeling. It will repair it, but it will not remodel your muscles bigger and stronger. And so that's why Blaha's wasting his time. And so are the rest of you people.
When he broke the data down and looked at it. So I think people have to think about that from this perspective. That if you're training really hard, you're not going to be progressing. You're not going to be recovering when you start going above about 20 sets. And I'd say even 20 sets, you better kind of have everything dialed in. You better really have everything dialed in. And I've seen people make great gains on 6 to 10, right? On like 6.
You see them make great gains in what? Doing 6 to 10. What gains did you see them gain? If it's coming really fast, it's sarcoplasmic. Myofibrillar growth takes a while to really see that density when you're building real muscle. Well, if you're looking for fluid, well, that's going to come quick.
10 sets. So here's the thing, though. Step back and look at how some of these great bodybuilders, and I'm talking the absolute greats, not necessarily Arnold, because Arnold even admitted he absolute greats. Not necessarily
What greats?
Arnold, because Arnold even admitted he overtrained his.
Arnold is a drug addict. That isn't bodybuilding. Listen, taking drugs is not based on bodybuilding. Drug addict, you're comparing drug addicts in the street. That's like saying these people that are taking fentanyl and shooting up, they must be great athletes. What are you talking about? You crazy?
It's crazy. But look all through the 80s.
They aren't athletes. They're just people on drugs doing weird shit, acting out. That isn't real.
Look at Dorian Yates.
What about Dorian Yates? Again, you see how he reveres these drug addicts? He thinks these are real bodybuilders. They're not real bodybuilders. They're fake. They took drugs.
All right, look at some of these guys. Phil Heath, Jay Cutler. And I know they're all...
Here we go. Jay, Phil Heath. None of that's going to work for real people doing real bodybuilding. Maybe for those fake people lifting, yeah. lifting full range of motion concentrically.
On drugs, but here's the thing, guys, they're on lots of drugs. Therefore, they should probably be able to handle more volumes, but they didn't.
Want to know why? Because they didn't build any more myofibrillar growth. That's why. Think about it. If those bodybuilders, if that was all myofibrillar growth, do you know how fucking strong they would be? They wouldn't even be able to keep up, because the amount of drugs they took, and let's say the amount of myofibrillars they grew, Christ, man, they'd be like benching 3,000 pounds or something. But they can't. You want to know why? Because they're not growing muscles. They don't lift eccentrically. They're not trying to damage their muscles anymore. They lift in the same behavior. They lift concentrically. In full ranges of motion, their muscles have adapted, and then most of the gains are sarcoplasmic. That's why they always complain. I went to sleep last night and I woke up this morning and I lost 10 pounds. How do you lose 10 pounds of muscle? Contractile proteins. If you build contractile proteins, 10 pounds doesn't just go away because you went to sleep last night and you woke up in the morning, 10 pounds is gone on the scale. That is sarcoplasmic hypertrophy.
So if the volumes were that critical, then these guys would have done it and been better, but they weren't. I mean,
no, because they don't lift to damage their muscles eccentrically. They don't. They continued in that same behavior because they don't know what builds muscles, because they never discovered what bodybuilding really is. You have to discover it on your own. And what we have discovered is bodybuilding is about building what? Muscle. Contractile proteins, these myofibrillars. Where does it build? In which part of the exercise does it build? Eccentrically. Why does it build eccentrically? Because that's the lengthening part. There you go. Builds it in parallel and series. Okay, lifting concentrically now. Let's say it's full range of motion, but you're hitting the concentric. All right. What's concentric do? It squeezes muscles. You're squeezing. Get it? It squeezes it, shortens. If it's shortening it and squeezing it, how does the muscle adapt to the shortening exercise? By a loss of sarcomere in series, because it's trying to align and adapt by pushing against some force. You understand me? In the opposite direction, going with gravity. So if your eccentric is adapted, I'm not talking about like what I do in overworking in a full range of motion. That is very difficult for some people to accomplish. I'm talking about when you're lifting and you are now completely adapted to your eccentric in a full range of motion. It really is a concentric exercise, you coming into the gym. And so what happens is you are shortening the sarcomere in series, because that's how it adapts to concentric lifting with a loss of muscle. It arranges it to give you more force production going against gravity. So if somebody's lifting and they're adapted to their exercise, they're lifting heavy concentrically, you have to ponder, look at their body. If it's growing, something is going on there. It ain't myofibrillar growth, that's for sure. See what I mean? So they're either doing something fake, taking a drug to try to fake it, to show, look at my body's getting bigger and I'm lifting concentrically heavy and their eccentric is adapted. Or mostly it's sarcoplasmic, and that's it. Or it's drugs, either or. And it's drugs because they got bigger and they're lifting a heavy weight because of the drug.
Lee Haney did about 20 for only some muscle groups, and most of them like 15 to 16. Okay, so look at these volumes. It works. Look at some of the top power lifters in the world. I'm talking guys who are squatting 900, 1,000 pounds, and that requires a lot.
No, it doesn't work, because if it did, they wouldn't have taken the drugs if it did. They would not have taken those drugs if it actually worked.
A lot of muscle. Guys benching 500 plus. Most of these guys...
Yeah, they took drugs to bench 500 plus. The fucking trend twins take drugs to bench 500 pounds plus. Duh.
They're not doing the sets you think they're doing. They're doing moderately high volumes. But, here's what's crazy.
Look, I've never seen anybody lift eccentrically on drugs, other than people that I trained in the past that were on drugs. I explained that you should lift eccentrically, and they got really fucking strong. Like, they got fucking massively big and strong. Some people ask me, how'd you figure this out? because that's the principles of bodybuilding, eccentric exercise. You don't lift concentrically because you can lift astronomically heavy in the eccentric. Get it? There's no point lifting concentrically. What's the point? If you could lift 140% heavier in the eccentric, what is the point of lifting concentrically? It ain't going to do nothing for you there. You know what I mean? You could stay there. Like Blaha, look at him. Look at it, he's useless. These exercises are useless.
That was considered high volume. Like guys, doing 15 sets a body part was considered to be high volume forever.
Doing 15 sets of body part, yeah, but you're adapted. Your eccentric is adapted. Look, when it's coming down, it's adapted. There's nothing. But you're getting some adaptations concentrically lifting there. Guess what you're getting? Nothing. You're shortening your muscles. You're keeping them small. You're training to keep your muscles from growing. How stupid is that? Hey, Mom, what are you doing? I'm training my muscles. I'm training my muscles. What are you doing? Concentrically. To do what? To keep them small.
Very few people tried to go way above that, and a few did, but they were the exceptions, and they didn't always win. Like Arnold was one of the exceptions.
Arnold is a drug addict. Shut up.
And even he said later, he goes, I was overtraining. I didn't even need to do all the stuff I was doing. But here's the thing I've noticed with all this too. The guys who try to do these crazy high volumes stagnate.
Even steroids won't build muscles if they're not damaged. If they ain't damaged and you're not activating the satellite cell, steroids can't help you. They aid in protein synthesis. They definitely bind with the receptor, that myocytic androgen receptor for force production. That's why when you have an influx of hormones, they bind to the androgen receptor, because what does science tell you? Myocytic androgen receptor controls the strength. So if that controls the strength, right, then what happens when hormones bind with the androgen receptor? It gives you maximal force production. So it increases your force production. All right. So what else does the hormone do, testosterone? Well, it aids in protein synthesis, but protein synthesis only happens when muscles are what? Damaged. Science will corroborate everything I say. If those muscles aren't relatively damaged, then there is no protein synthesis. There isn't any. I'm not joking. You go in adapted lifting in the gym, lifting there. You're not doing anything other than, well, your concentric is adapting by staying small. You understand me? Your eccentric is adapted. There's no damage. And you're concentrically lifting, because it's full range of motion, whatever you're doing there, you're still hitting the concentric. And that is keeping your muscles small in the shortened position. So you're exercising to keep your muscles small. So people go to the gym to inflame their muscles, right? To pretend that they get puffy and inflamed, walk around as if they got gains, and they're keeping their muscles small by going to the gym, lifting repetitively. And then they try to show themselves, look at me after 15 years of lifting, or 20, and they look like they're stuck on these so-called, what do you call, newbie gains. Like they barely gained anything there. Want to know why? Because they've been going to the gym to keep their muscles short from growing. How stupid is that? You go to the gym to keep your muscles from growing. Okay.
I've taken more lifters who were doing...
It's like Blaha, look at him lifting concentrically. He lifts concentrically to keep his muscles small from growing. The heavier you go concentrically, the smaller your muscles will get. That's why people can't figure out, I got a stronger, but I never got a bigger. And if anything, they got a smaller. See, I got stronger, but I got smaller. Why did you get stronger and get smaller? I'm a small, strong guy. Because you're a small, strong guy, because the heavier you go concentrically, the smaller you get. See what I mean? Now, I'm not saying in powerlifting, you're lifting heavy, something off the floor. You're starting eccentrically lifting up. There is some adaptations in the eccentric part. Lifting. When you're lifting it off the ground, there's going to be some damage there. But it's minute. There's not a lot going on there. See what I mean? In the arm area, shoulder, and the trap area of the back.
25 plus sets, 4 muscle groups, and we're completely stagnated and taking them down to like 10 to 12. and all of a sudden they start making gains again. Okay? People who were stagnating, and not just always advanced lifters, sometimes novice.
They're not making gains. They're making gains. The gains to shorten their muscles to get them to get smaller. The heavier you go concentrically, the smaller they'll get.
Lifters. All right, and yet in the same thing, we have.
But they will inflame. You'll inflame them every time you come in often to the gym doing that. And you'll increase the sarcoplasm because it'll do that. See what I mean?
Have to step over and look at all of these really, really great bodybuilders, the majority, and powerlifters. The majority are just not doing 20 plus sets. And again, these are guys who are on drugs that will let them recover. So again,
yes, they're on drugs and let them, yes.
If it was purely even a recovery issue and there was just limitless muscle fiber recruitment, they would get more benefit. And here's what people are forgetting.
Sure.
If you're doing any volume that is not hitting the fast twitch fibers and you're not a novice lifter anymore, you're probably not growing from that volume. It falls into the...
I love this one. You're probably not growing from that volume. You're not growing. You're actually shrinking from that volume. You're shrinking. You are increasing the sarcoplasm, but you're shrinking the muscle fibers.
Category of junk volume. Okay, it's junk volume. And is it going to guarantee?
Why do you think Blaha is always complaining about his arms? Look at his arms. They're never growing. He is never growing, and if anything, he got smaller. So what does he do? He ups the dose of the steroid. The steroid can only work so far. It'll only increase the sarcoplasm to give him these fake puffy muscles. He inflames his muscles to look nice and puffy when he walks around, so he lifts to inflame it, and he lifts to keep them small by shortening them.
Cause you to make less gains? No, it may just be the same amount of gains and you're doing more work. But in a lot of cases, for people who don't have a great lifestyle, whose lifestyle and stress isn't dialed in, yes, it causes stagnation. And I've seen it plenty of times. And I've had lifters, that's the only thing I changed, and they made progress.
And people wonder why I don't go to the gym. Why don't I want to work out? Because lifting eccentrically can be taxing for some people. You know, constantly doing that to try to build myofibrillar growth. I could go to the gym and lift like everybody else, lift lazily, like really lazy, do full ranges of motion and just, whatever, and fuck off. But there's no point. I mean, you're just inflaming your muscles and then shortening them. You understand me? You're making them get smaller. Yeah. You have to be very careful what you do in a gym. You can cause your muscles to shrink, to get small by lifting. Yeah, I'm not joking.
So it's so strange that we have these certain circles who are pushing these crazy high volumes as if you're going to benefit from it.
It's because they don't know what they're doing. They're shooting darts in the wind. We'll do these high rep ranges or sets, these high sets or rep ranges or whatever. They're just shooting darts, dude. They don't know what they're doing.
Not. You're simply not. And I choose to do myself like 6 days a week of training because I have everything spread out and I'm trying to isolate a ton of stuff. But even then, really, it's still about 12 sets a week total. Even though I do 6 days, because I'm coming in and isolating a lot of little smaller stuff, right? All the heads of my delts, my biceps, things like that. So again, insanity, but all these people are convinced of it.
This is insanity. It's insanity to go to a gym trying to build muscle while you're actually you're making them not grow. You're lifting to the point where they don't grow to keep them small from growing. That's insane. And then you're telling people I go to the gym because I'm building muscle, but you're actually going there to keep them from building. Oh, okay.
That is the way to go. And when you look at the data some of these researchers are putting out, the guys who are even promoting it most of the time are not even big. They're not even big. It's weird. have PhDs and gains and promote these volumes, and they're not big.
Oh, yeah.
You look at the data, and it really doesn't show it as
Yeah.
much as you would think it does.
The data.
And then there's been other older studies that showed it literally caused less growth.
Sure.
All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today.
Thank God. There's some data that shows there's less gains. There's 0 gains there if you're adapted and lifting concentrically. I'll see you in the next one, friends. That was funny.